Trump je gotov, ljudi moji. Kako oni njega umjetno održavaju na životu, ne znam. Međutim, ovdje je više nego vidljivo da je gotov, finito. Znači, koristi ga, Izrael ga koristi kao svog korisnog idiota, ko što su rekli da je on prvi američki predsjednik Izraela, ljudi moji. Ej. Sad ćete vidjeti kako izgleda.
Health is rapidly deteriorating before our eyes, as is his cognitive abilities. Yesterday, when Donald Trump was giving that unhinged speech at an event for veterans, where he was, I guess, ignoring questions from the press about the invasion of Iran, you can see Donald Trump's neck right there had this horrible rash, and it looked like there were lesions developing. We know that Donald Trump's first his right hand was discolored, and many people believed it was potentially from IV injections. It was definitely discolored, and his left hand was discolored. He was trying to slop makeup all over that, and now he's got the rash on his neck. Before, you also saw he had that droopy face that almost looked like he was exhibiting post-stroke-like symptoms. We rewind a little bit, of course, and he struggles to walk straight. And all of this is happening before our eyes. Remember when Donald Trump rolled out the red carpet for Vladimir Putin in Alaska, and the cameras were rolling, and we captured him at the Midas Touch Network, zigzagging, could not walk in a straight line. Same thing when he was in Japan before Prime Minister Takahashi. He needed to be chaperoned and walk around. He, again, couldn't walk in a straight line. We know that his speech patterns are, he can't connect sentences anymore. He continues to talk about not getting into heaven and that the end is near. Words to the effect of, I don't think I'm going to get into heaven. I don't think I'm going to, I really wish I got into heaven. And you've just this utterly deranged behavior. You all saw, again, take a look. This is a real photo. This isn't AI. This isn't enhanced. This is what he looked like yesterday. A reminder of what his hands looked like. The White House doctor who covers up for him, Sean Barbarella, released this statement. This is the same guy who said that Donald Trump was getting a preventative MRI, and then they said it wasn't an MRI, it was a CT scan. No, it wasn't a CT scan, but it was just of the abdomen. That same guy, Barbarella, who said that it was a preventative CT, or first it was an MRI, he's the guy who did this statement. Trump is using a very common cream on the right side of his neck, which is a preventative skin treatment prescribed by the White House doctor. The president is using this treatment for 1 week, and the redness is expected to last for a few weeks. Preventative? I mean, we see whatever that rash is. Dr. Reiner explains, preventative skin treatment, such as topical 5-fluorosil, are commonly used to prevent overt skin cancer in people with precancerous skin lesions. We don't know what specific treatment the president is receiving, but why all the secrecy for something that is potentially easy to treat and very common in older people? Lots of people are saying what this probably is some sort of precancerous skin lesion, and the topical cream was used to potentially address that. But now they're covering that up. They were covering up the MRIs. They're covering up Butler, Pennsylvania medical records. Remember, they never produced the Butler, Pennsylvania records. When Donald Trump does go to Walter Reed, rather than actually give a medical report, it's like Donald Trump's good health is evidenced by the fact that he plays very good golf. Then they act like he's like 6'3" or 6'4", like 210 pounds, which he, absolutely isn't. But, one notable thing that as the United States is at war right now, Donald Trump had Benjamin Netanyahu on state regime media to try to make the case and explain the war to the people of the United States. He's basically delegating everything to Netanyahu right now. And then Rubio went out, and Rubio said America went to war with Iran because Netanyahu was going to go to war with Iran first. and then Iran was going to strike back at the United States if Israel struck Iran first. So that's why we went to war. But have you noticed that, Donald Trump usually is the guy who goes on state regime media, he answers the questions. Right now he's calling reporters and saying a bunch of deranged, unhinged things to them, as he calls them one by one, and he says like different things to them, like, this is what war is about, people die in war, so I guess that's what's going to happen. Or when people say, hey, what are you going to do next, or do we have enough munitions? We'll see what happens, we'll see, it is what it is. But he has basically
Pošalji svoje sinove tamo, majmune jedan, ono. I ti Plenkoviću, pošalji svoje sinove tamo.
Basically what, serve as like the shadow president? I don't know, Netanyahu was explaining why there was a war with Iran. Then there was this moment too.
Podržavaš genocid, šalji svoje sinove dole.
So at that
Kogod podržava ovo,
play the video right here so
sve bi vas transportiralo tamo u Gazu.
Trump puts a medal on a veteran.
Sve da jednog.
And the White House couldn't even afford long ribbons, and so they put this ribbon over the veteran, and Trump struggles to put the ribbon on. I'll just play you the clip. Watch this. He struggles to put the ribbon on. The ribbon's like choking, and then the audience claps for Trump like he's like a seal at SeaWorld who like ate a sardine or something. Like, what are we even watching here? Here, play this clip.
Koja sramota je.
I'm Ginger.
Koja je ovo sramota? Sad ćete vidjeti kako ovo izgleda. Pseća ogrlica, gledao. Good dog, good dog. Katastrofa, užas.
So then regarding, as I told you, the statements that he's making to reporters, this is what his statement is about ground troops, about putting boots on the ground in Iran. This is what he told the New York Post. I don't have the yips with respect to boots on the ground, like every president says. There will be no boots on the ground. I don't say it. I say probably don't need them, or if they're necessary, no yips. I don't have the yips. I don't have the yips. That's your statement right there. Or when Donald Trump was speaking to the group of veterans, he started just talking about the ballroom yesterday. Do you remember that? Here, play this clip.
Thank you, everybody. We have a lot of
Nećemo ovo gledat, ne mogu. Idemo vidjet, ovo je jako dobar dečko, Brian Tyler Cohen. Jako je dobar podcast i on je odvjetnik.
From him on the Epstein matter backfire worse than this.
And finally, do you think that Donald Trump should be deposed by this committee?
Absolutely. I was a lawyer, and as a lawyer, you would look for pattern and practice. If you were deposing a witness in a case that you were trying, if you were in court, what did you know about this person? What you knew could influence how you questioned that person, how you tried the case. Donald Trump has been held civilly liable for sexual assault by a jury of his peers. 9 members of a jury found him liable in the sexual assault of E. Jean Carroll. That is behavior. That fits a pattern if one were looking for a pattern. He has also been convicted on 34 felony counts for attempting to hide his relationship with a
Isto ko Pupovac, što je prijavljen 7 kaznenih djela. Odgovarat ćeš.
In the 2016 campaign, which was ultimately election interference. So if I were running the committee or I were involved in this investigation, I would be looking for people who maybe had some prior conduct that might be relevant to either money or crimes. And yes, I think that it would be in keeping with the scope of the investigation of this committee to
sve vas na poligraf staviti, sve.
with President Trump. I know he's been deposed many, many, many times. He's taken the Fifth Amendment many, many hundreds of times.
Ma
So I'm
kakav
not
peti
saying you're
amandman?
going to get a lot of
To
information.
ukinut treba.
But given what's in the files and given past and prior conduct, he would be on my witness list.
So let me get this straight. Donald Trump is severely implicated in the Epstein files. All the attention is on him and his name being mentioned 38,000 times. He needs to get the attention off of
Milion
him, so he
puta mu je
issues his little
spomenuto
clarion
ime.
call to his minions.
It's really a Democrat problem. It's not a Republican, it's a Democrat problem.
Či
And
budal.
his minions answer that call. James Comer and the Oversight Committee Republicans called in the
Ko puši
boogeyman of
ovo,
all
taj
boogeymen, the
stvarno nije
Clintons,
normalan.
because no one will get the attention off of Trump better than the most reviled figures on the right. And best case scenario, Hillary Clinton refuses to testify,
Lijevo,
and you can
desno.
just cue the outrage machine about what she's hiding.
Bolesno.
Only, small problem, Hillary did show up, and she testified, and she answered every single question, and then she used her time in what was supposed to be a coup for the Republicans and Trump to instead give a detailed, thoughtful, and persuasive answer as to why Trump himself should testify. If you are looking for the backfire of the year, you just got it. And let's be clear, it's not just Hillary Clinton calling for Donald Trump to testify. Now that James Comer has delivered the gift of establishing a precedent wherein everybody has to testify, even presidents of the United States, well, now there's no reason not to call on Trump and explain what he knows, which is why Ro Khanna said this on national television just this weekend.
Let me talk to you about one of the big headlines before the strikes against Iran this week, the fallout over the Epstein files.
Pa pokrenuo je
As you
rat
know,
radi
former
toga.
President Bill Clinton
A
testified
neće
for
se
the
ta
House
sotona
Oversight
zaustaviti,
Committee
sekta
behind
ta.
closed doors, saying, quote, he had no
Bog će ih
idea of the
rasturit.
crimes that Epstein was committing. Do you have any outstanding questions for President Bill Clinton about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, Congressman?
Da, ovo je globalno razotkrivanje, ovo je prst Božji.
When the transcript comes out, I think people will see that he answered every question. I actually think they'll see that some of the Democrats asked him tougher questions than even the Republicans, and he sat there. He didn't take the fifth. He answered every question fully, and the American people will be able to decide on what they believe. The point, though, is that President Clinton has set a precedent, a new Clinton rule. That means that Donald Trump should
Globalno
do the same,
suđenje
answer
je
the
ovo
questions. Howard
pred
Lutnick
očima
should do the
cijelog
same.
svijeta.
I'm working with a Republican actually to subpoena Howard Lutnick next week, and I believe he will come before the committee.
Pedofiličine,
And every person who went to that
ubojice,
island or who
sotone.
corresponded with Epstein about
Ko
going
god
to
vas
his mansion
podržava.
should be called under oath to tell us what they knew.
Sotono.
So you're going to subpoena Howard Lutnick. Do you plan to subpoena President Trump, and do you believe you have the votes to subpoena President Trump to testify before the committee?
We have the votes to subpoena Lutnick. I don't believe we have the votes right now to subpoena President Trump because the Republicans control the House, and I don't think they would
Nevjerojatno.
vote with us on
Užas.
that. But when Robert Garcia is chair of the Oversight Committee, we will have those votes. And the Clinton rule means that Donald Trump and his family members should testify. By the way, he should do it voluntarily. I mean, he should look at what
hoće.
President Clinton did. He answered every question. Why can't Donald Trump do the same? There's this question of these three
Kad je
FBI interviews.
pedofiličina.
There's someone who made allegations against Donald Trump that she was sexually abused as a minor. I want to be very clear. There's no evidence whether that's true or not, but there were allegations made. One
Di
of those
si je ženu
witness interviews
kupio?
was released. 3 of them are hidden by the Justice Department. Why are they hidden? When will they be released? These are the types of questions Donald Trump needs to answer.
Mi
And Robert
Melanica.
Garcia just days earlier offering up the same sentiment.
I also want to add one other thing which I think is really important. Republicans have now set a new precedent, which is to bring in presidents and former presidents to testify. So we're once again going to make that call that we did yesterday. We are now asking and demanding that President Trump officially come in and testify in front of the Oversight Committee.
Aha,
He
hoću.
appears in the Epstein files.
Umrit će
Next to
preko
Joe
noći.
Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, almost
Riješit
more
će
than
ga
anybody
ko
else.
apštena.
So it's time for the president to answer questions about why files are missing from the DOJ, why there's been a White House cover-up, and why we continue in that administration to call this
Ljudi
investigation
moji, ljudi
a hoax.
moji.
And finally, I'll review the call that we made yesterday, that we are demanding, again, that the press and the public be allowed inside the depositions so that you can hear the answers to the questions directly. And if that's not going to happen, they need to release a full, unedited review of the questions and video within 24 hours of the end of these depositions. That means the Secretary Clinton deposition needs to be released immediately today.
And I want to be clear, Trump knew full well that this was going to happen. Here's what he said when asked if he wants to see Bill Clinton testify just before.
I don't like seeing him deposed, but, you know, they certainly went after me a lot more than that. I like him, and I don't like seeing him deposed.
Quote, I don't like seeing him deposed. Yeah, I'll bet you don't like seeing presidents who have some association with Jeffrey Epstein deposed. I'll bet you don't like seeing him hauled in front of Congress. I'll bet that I can figure out why that might rub you the wrong way. And yet that never stopped James Comer from establishing this precedent anyway that would eventually train all of our attention on Donald Trump. All because Comer thought that he could turn this into the usual D versus R food fight. But here's the problem. Democrats are not in a cult of personality. We're not going to blindly rush to Bill Clinton's defense just because he's a Democrat. Frankly, Bill Clinton should testify. Hillary Clinton should testify. I'm glad they testified. I think that should happen to everybody, that they should all testify. And now, thanks to James Comer, we have precedent that says exactly that. And in fact, Comer was asked about this point, about hauling Donald Trump in to testify. Here's what he had to say.
Secretary Clinton said in her opening statement, if Republicans were serious about investigating Jeffrey Epstein, that you would call President Trump to testify. Why won't you?
Well, President Trump has answered hundreds, if not thousands, of questions from you all about Epstein, and I think he's been very...
Joj, kriminalna bando sotonska.
Hopefully more documents to come in. We're still assessing the...
Bando jedna, gotovi ste. The end, game over.
And bringing more people in for questions.
Okay, so let's get something straight. Answering questions about Epstein by lying to those questions, that's not transparency, that's just lying. By Comer's logic, answers like these would be sufficient to say that Donald Trump has already answered for all of his Epstein connections in a satisfactory manner.
Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years.
I pričat će se.
We have Texas,
I
we have this,
pričat
we
će
have
se.
all of the things.
I o tebi i o njemu,
Are people still
pedofilu
talking
jedan.
about this guy, this creep?
Aha,
That is
creep is your friend.
I think it's time now for the country to maybe get onto something else.
Neće, aha. Ratu, jel?
Yeah, what did you say?
Bolesnik, bolesnik.
You are the worst reporter. No wonder CNN has no ratings because of people like you. You know, she's a young woman. I don't think I've
Gle
ever
kak
seen you
napada,
smile. I've known
kako
you for
si
10
jadan,
years.
ne.
I don't think I've ever seen a smile on your face. You know why? You know
Bravo,
why
žena.
because you know you're not telling the truth. And you're
Kukavica, žuta, smrade. Na ženu si se okomio. Ljigavac. Po meni su svi ovi novinari, kad je ovak počeo vrijeđati ženu, novinarku, kolegicu, trebali su i svi izaći van. Smeće jedno, narcisoidno, pa naravno da se bojiš se ti, bojiš smrti. Smeće, ma nema milosti za to i gotovo. Ne, ovo kad vidim, ma kako, fuj.
President Trump has been the most transparent president on the
Joj,
Epstein files.
najtransparentniji.
How many Epstein files did Joe Biden release? How many?
There was an ongoing
How many Epstein files did Joe Biden
release? There was an
release?
ongoing prosecution in
Zero.
2022.
How many did Obama release?
Wait. I mean, acknowledge what I just said. There was an ongoing investigation up to 2022 that was appealed, and that appeal ended in 2025 because there was an ongoing prosecution.
So let her finish her point.
So President Trump has been transparent about this. He has also been
Gle, ovo, čim kažu ovi sektaši transparentan, znate da lažu.
Answered. Oval office, press room.
To su ovi na sudu protiv mene govorili, da su oni najtransparentnija crkva u Hrvatskoj. Evo, gle ovo glupaču. Stupid woman.
still talking about the Epstein files. When a reporter on Air Force One asked him about the Epstein files, he called her piggy. When Caitlin Collins just a few days ago tried to ask him about the Epstein files, he attacked her and said that she should smile more. This is the transparency that you expect from the president?
The files released are the transparency.
We have
Kako
6
si
million files
glupa,
and 3
kako
million
si
are released. What about the other 3
glupa,
million? Are
strašno.
you okay with that? Are you okay with 3 million files not being released?
Ma ova je isto sapšteno ovog otoka, ono.
Somewhere along the line,
Katastrofa,
Republicans got their
užasno.
marching orders that Donald Trump's desperate deflections away from answering for the Epstein files, that his rambling screeds, his winding diatribes, that those count as transparency, does not seem to be working out so well. In fact, I also asked right-wing host Katie Pavlich on News Nation whether she supports Donald Trump following the James Comer precedent. She, too, was not exactly too keen on answering. Given the fact that Trump himself is named in the Epstein files 38,000 times, do you think he should at least testify in the same way that Bill and Hillary Clinton did?
There are multiple people who have testified already in these depositions who have said that the president is
Gle sektu, ovo je sekta, gle ovo.
Even today,
wouldn't you want to hear from the guy? Wouldn't you want to hear right from the horse's mouth?
I think the president has much bigger issues to deal with, and even today, President Bill Clinton said that
žena da to može izjaviti, fuj.
We started the show talking about the Epstein files.
Bolesnico,
I think it's interesting that we're now diverting away from the facts on local Democrats letting criminals out of prison who are then going and murdering people at bus stops
Sekta,
and on the
kult,
train. But I want to get to
I think it's a pretty big issue when you have the sitting president of the and frankly if the
Pogledajte ovo, ljudi moji, pogledajte. Ovo je žena. Ovo je žena. Žena, ne do Bog majka. Koja bi svoje vlastito dijete valjda podvodila ili je i sama podvođena. Pa kako možeš dokazanog prijestupnika seksualnog braniti? Za koje novce ovog svijeta? Daj mi to objasni, žena. Pod navodnicima, sramoto. Ženska. Znači, to su vam plaćenici, ljudi, to vam je taj cionistički projekt koji plaća ovakve korisne idiote. Nevjerojatno.
president was a Democrat and he was implicated in the biggest sex trafficking ring in the United States, in the history of this country.
I think the word implicated is pretty strong, and I
but
think
how would you know? But how would you know if he doesn't?
Because you can read the documents, you can read the emails, and this isn't just about President Trump.
But we have 3 million documents that haven't been released.
Yes, you can. The Epstein thing is a distraction.
Is a distraction from what?
From this story that happened just today, where we have an illegal immigrant from West Africa.
Ne bih, ču glupaču, ljudi moji.
Yeah, registered convicted sex offender.
Pogledajte
The president who was named in files with no evidence at all of criminal wrongdoing. They're two very different things. But I want to get back to the news.
Why wouldn't you want some transparency?
There's plenty of transparency, which is why President Trump signed the legislation to put out the documents.
Do you support the
I think the president has much more important issues
in front of the?
Look, we're completely off base here talking about the Epstein files. I want to ask you this question about what happened in Fairfax County just tonight. We now know.
So look, I have been crystal clear for months now. Anybody who has information about Epstein should testify. That includes the Democrats, that includes the Republicans. But what's happening here at the hands of these Republicans is not transparency. It is a stunt. They heard Trump's little clarion call to make this a quote Democrat problem, and they're following his orders. That is why Hillary Clinton was called to testify before the guy whose own name was mentioned 38,000 times in the files. That is why Pam Bondi lied about the files being on her desk. It's why those right-wing influencers waved around their
Gotovi ste vi crkvenjaci, šugavi, lažljivi.
More than 2 months after the files
Ovo je
were
duhovna stvar.
3 million files still haven't been released. It's why within those files, survivors' names were exposed and co-conspirators' names were hidden. It could not be more obvious that the U.S. government, under Donald Trump, is engaged in a cover-up to protect a pedophile ring. And while all of these Republicans parade Clintons around and cosplay as champions for transparency, the reality is that they could have actual transparency if they wanted it. But they chose to put loyalty to Trump over accountability for the survivors.
Dame i gospodo, gotovo je Trumpovo čudovište. Gotov si, game over.